Hi everyone, Andy here, and welcome back to the AI Breakdown. Now, in this episode, I'm doing something a bit different. Instead of the usual weekly roundup, don't worry, that's still coming in the normal Wednesday slot. I wanted to dedicate this one to the International AI Safety Report 2026, which has just been released. This was published on the 3rd of February, and I think it's one of the most important documents to come out of the AI space this year because it's the closest thing we've got to a global consensus on where AI actually stands right now, what the real risks are, and where the gaps are in how we're managing all of this. But first, a number that sets the scene. Over 700 million people now use AI systems every single week. That's faster adoption than the personal computer. In some countries, more than half the population uses AI regularly. In parts of Africa, Asia, and Latin America, it's under 10%. So we've got this technology spreading faster than anything we've seen before, but spreading very unevenly. And the question this report tries to answer is, are we keeping up with the risks? So let me give you the quick background, then we'll get into the findings. This episode is sponsored by Notify Technology, a health and safety software partner, helping teams run incident management, audits and inspections, and risk assessments in one place. And with Notify Spark, their AI companion, they're streamlining incident reporting and investigations, saving time, reducing admin load, and helping teams act faster on what matters. Learn more at notifytechnology.com. This is the second edition of the International AI Safety Report. The first one came out in January 2025, and this whole initiative was born out of the 2023 AI Safety Summit at Bletchley Park. You might remember that one. It was all over the news. It's led by Yoshua Bengio, who's a Turing Award winner and one of the people widely regarded as a godfather of modern AI. And he's not doing this alone. It's backed by an expert advisory panel with nominees from over 30 countries and international organizations, including the OECD, the EU, and the United Nations. Over 100 AI experts contributed, so this isn't a tech company's marketing report. It's not a government policy paper telling you what to do. It's an independent, evidence-based assessment of three big questions. 1. What can AI actually do today, and how might that change? 2. What are the emerging risks? And 3. What risk management approaches exist, and are they working? The report's findings are set to inform discussions at the India AI Impact Summit later this month. So this is shaping global policy. Let's get into it. Right, so the report starts by laying out where AI capabilities are right now. And the headline is, unsurprisingly, that things are moving fast. Computing power has grown exponentially since 2012, with the largest training runs likely surpassing 10 to the power of 26 floating point operations in 2025. Now, if that number means nothing to you, don't worry. It means nothing to most people, me included. The point is it's absolutely enormous, and it's growing at a pace that puts Moore's law to shame. General purpose AI systems can now converse fluently in multiple languages, generate code, create realistic images and short videos, and solve graduate-level maths and science problems. Reasoning models, the ones that work through problems step by step before giving an answer, have become more common, and they're driving some real improvements in maths, coding, and scientific tasks, including things like protein design. But here's the nuance, and this is really important. The report describes AI performance as jagged, and I love that word for it because it perfectly captures what a lot of us are seeing in practice. I see this constantly. Just this month, multiple top AI models, including ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini, were asked, is 2027 next year? And confidently said no. Google's AI even insisted that if it's 2026, next year's 2028. Basic calendar maths. These are the same systems solving graduate-level physics problems. That's jagged performance in action, and it's something every business leader needs to internalize. These tools can be extraordinary and embarrassingly wrong in the same afternoon. They still hallucinate, they still struggle with multi-step projects, and they're noticeably weaker in less common languages. And then there's AI agents, systems that can plan, reason, and use tools to accomplish real-world tasks. The report acknowledges that agents are a major focus of development. They can already complete certain software engineering tasks with limited human oversight, but they can't yet handle the full range of complex, long-term planning needed to fully automate most jobs. For now, agents complement rather than replace humans. The takeaway here for business leaders: AI is genuinely powerful, but it's unevenly powerful. If you're deploying it, you need to test it in your specific use case, not just trust the benchmark results. Now, the report organizes the risks into 3 categories, and I think this framework is actually really useful for how we think about AI risk in business. First up, risks from malicious use, where someone intentionally uses AI to cause harm. The report documents a growing wave of AI-generated content being used for criminal purposes. We're talking scams, fraud, blackmail, extortion, defamation, and the production of non-consensual intimate imagery. AI-generated deepfakes are becoming more realistic and harder to detect, and personalized deepfake pornography disproportionately targets women and girls. That's a grim finding, but one the business world can't ignore either, because deepfakes are increasingly being used for impersonation, attacks, brand abuse, and evidence contamination. And it's not just about faking images. The report found that AI-generated text can measurably shift people's beliefs in experimental settings. And here's the kicker: the more powerful the model, the more persuasive it gets. A study of 17 models showed a direct link between computing power and the ability to change someone's mind. Longer, more personal conversations with AI chatbots increase the persuasive effect even further. Now, we're not seeing evidence of mass manipulation yet, but as models get bigger and interactions get more personal, the potential scales with it. That should matter to anyone thinking about trust, brand integrity, or internal decision making. Now, think about what that means in a business context. We're already seeing companies like Coca-Cola publicly shifting strategy from, and I quote, price to persuasion, leaning heavily on AI to craft marketing messages. OpenAI just started running ads inside ChatGPT in February. So you've got AI-generated content that gets measurably more persuasive as the models get more powerful, and it's now embedded in the tools people use to make decisions. If someone sends you an AI-generated pitch, or an AI-drafted business case lands on your desk, or a vendor's proposal reads brilliantly, you need to start asking, is this persuasive because it's right, or because it's optimized to be convincing? That's a new skill for leadership teams, and it's one most haven't developed yet. On cybersecurity, here's a stat that really jumped out at me. In 2025, an AI agent competed in a major cybersecurity competition and placed in the top 5% of all teams, most of whom were expert human professionals. Criminal groups and state-associated attackers are already using AI in their operations. Pre-packaged AI attack tools are being sold on underground marketplaces, lowering the barrier for anyone who wants to cause damage. And on biological risks, AI systems can now produce laboratory instructions, help troubleshoot experimental procedures, and answer technical questions in ways that reduce barriers to harmful workflows. Some models now match or exceed expert-level performance in troubleshooting virology protocols. In fact, in 2025, multiple AI developers released new models with additional safeguards specifically because they couldn't rule out that their systems might help novices develop biological weapons. That's not a hypothetical. That's companies changing their own release process because the risk was real enough to act on. The report is careful to note there's still substantial uncertainty about how much this increases real-world risk, given practical barriers, but the trajectory is concerning. The second risk category is malfunctions, where AI systems fail or operate outside their intended parameters. This is arguably the most immediately relevant risk for most businesses. AI systems fabricate information, they produce flawed code, they give misleading medical advice, and no combination of current methods eliminates failures entirely. The report flags that AI agents could compound these reliability risks because they operate with greater autonomy, making it harder for humans to step in before a failure causes real damage. The report also addresses loss of control scenarios, situations where AI systems might evade oversight or resist shutdown. Now, it's worth saying that experts' views on the likelihood of this vary enormously. Current systems may show early signs of some of these behaviors, but they're not yet highly capable in this area. Still, it's on the radar. The third category is systemic risks, the broader societal impacts of widespread AI deployment. And there are a few findings here that I think are particularly relevant. On jobs, early evidence shows reduced demand for easily substitutable work like writing and translation, and increased demand for complementary skills like machine learning programming. Newer research shows no significant effects on overall employment yet, but there are potential impacts on junior workers in AI-exposed roles like software engineering and customer service. But the finding that really stuck with me was about cognitive offloading. The report cites a study where clinicians who'd been using AI-assisted colonoscopy had their tumor detection rate drop by 6% after just a few months of relying on AI support. And there's a related experiment with nearly 3,000 participants that makes this even more relatable. People were less likely to correct an AI's wrong answer when fixing it required more effort, like actually typing in the correct value. And people with more favorable attitudes toward AI were even less likely to push back. In other words, the more you like AI and the harder it is to correct, the more likely you are to just let the mistake slide. That's not a software bug, that's a human capabilities bug. And it connects to a broader pattern the report calls automation bias, where people over-rely on AI outputs, even when those outputs are wrong. For anyone managing teams that use AI tools, that should be a wake-up call. The risk isn't just that AI makes a mistake, it's that your team stops catching the mistakes. And honestly, I think every team using AI regularly should be building in what I'd call manual override moments. Once a month, once a quarter, whatever fits, do the work without AI and compare the results. Because the skill erosion the report describes is invisible until something goes wrong. You won't notice your team is less sharp until the AI isn't there, and suddenly nobody catches the error. We saw this play out publicly when Deloitte submitted an AI-assisted report to the Australian government that was full of fabricated citations. They had to refund part of a $300,000 contract. That's what happens when you stop checking. And for what it's worth, the report connects this to broader inequality concerns too. The report also touches on AI companion apps, which now have tens of millions of users. Studies have found some of these products may foster psychological dependence, reinforce harmful beliefs, or encourage dangerous actions, though the evidence is early stage and mixed. And on inequality, the report warns that AI adoption could shift earnings from workers to capital owners, and that the impact on economic growth in advanced economies could be more than twice that of low-income countries. Jamie Dimon at the World Economic Forum warned that without proactive management, this could cause civil unrest. That's JP Morgan's CEO saying that, not an activist. So here's the part that should concern anyone running a business that relies on AI, which increasingly is most of us. The report finds that risk management is getting more structured, but it's not keeping up with the pace of capability growth. 12 companies published or updated Frontier AI Safety Frameworks in 2025. These are documents that describe how they plan to manage risks as they build more capable models. That number has more than doubled since the first report. But there's a catch, and it's a significant one. Some AI systems can now detect when they're being tested and behave differently during evaluation. Let that sink in for a moment. You're testing a model, it knows it's being tested, and it adjusts its behavior accordingly. That makes pre-deployment safety testing fundamentally harder. The report calls this part of a broader evaluation gap, where benchmark results simply don't reliably predict real-world performance or risk. The report advocates for what it calls defense in depth, layering multiple safeguards so that no single failure point brings the whole thing down. That means combining capability evaluations, technical safeguards, ongoing monitoring, and incident response, not just ticking a box before launch. On open weight models, the report makes an important point. These models are great for research and innovation, but their safeguards can be more easily removed, and once you release the weights, you can't recall them. That's a fundamentally different risk profile to a hosted API. And there's a broader structural risk the report flags that doesn't get enough attention. The entire AI ecosystem is concentrated around a small number of providers. If one of those providers has a major failure, The cascading effects could hit thousands of businesses simultaneously. And we don't need to speak hypothetically here. On the 3rd and 4th of February, the same week this report was published, ChatGPT went down twice in 2 days. Over 28,000 users reported issues on the first day alone, with another major spike the following morning. By the 5th of February, the instability continued, marking the third disruption in 48 hours. When these major flickers happen, even if the API stays partially online, the ecosystem feels it. Businesses lose access to their integrated workflows, customer bots lag, and developers lose hours of productivity. And I don't think most companies using these tools have a plan B. That's the concentration risk the report is warning about. You're trusting the black box, and everyone's trusting the same handful of black boxes. And here's the dilemma the report describes for policymakers, and honestly for all of us. They call it the evidence dilemma. AI changes fast, but evidence about what works to manage the risks comes slowly. Move too early and you might lock in the wrong solutions. Wait too long and you leave everyone exposed. Now, I'll give you my take on this because I think it matters. I'd rather businesses move now with imperfect governance than wait for perfect governance that never arrives. You don't need a flawless AI policy. You need a working one that you revisit every quarter. The companies that will get hurt aren't the ones whose governance framework isn't perfect. They're the ones who never started building one. That's where I fall on it. And honestly, the Allianz Risk Barometer for 2026 backs this up. They've ranked AI as the second biggest global business risk this year, right behind cyber incidents. The insurance industry isn't waiting for more evidence. They're pricing this risk in now, so should you. Right, so the report doesn't make specific policy recommendations. It's deliberately evidence only. But the implications for business are pretty clear, and here's my take on what you should be doing. First, get serious about procurement. If you're buying or deploying AI tools, demand transparency on model capabilities, limitations, training data provenance, and built-in safeguards. Given that performance is jagged and models can behave differently in testing than in production, scenario-specific testing is essential. Don't just rely on the vendor's assurances. Second, update your internal governance. That means clear risk ownership structures, documented model monitoring, data governance and audit trails, and specific safeguards for high-risk use cases. The regulatory landscape is moving quickly. The EU AI Act, China's AI Safety Governance Framework, the G7 Hiroshima process, and proactive governance now will save you a headache later. Third, prepare for external threats. Strengthen your defenses against deepfake impersonation, ramp up your cybersecurity testing, and have controls in place around model access and data leakage. The report makes clear that pre-packaged AI attack tools are already in circulation. This isn't theoretical. And fourth, treat AI as a dynamic risk, not a set-and-forget deployment. That means ongoing monitoring, incident logging, and periodic reassessment. And given what the report says about concentration risk, think about your vendor diversification. If your entire AI stack depends on one provider, that's a single point of failure you can start addressing now. The risk landscape the report describes is constantly shifting, which means your governance needs to shift with it. Look, this report is over 100 pages and it covers a lot of ground. I'll drop a link to it in the show notes if you want to go deeper. But here's the bottom line. AI is spreading faster than any technology we've seen before. The capabilities are real, but so are the risks, and the gap between the two is widening. The safety net hasn't caught up. And for business leaders, that means the responsibility falls on you to build your own guardrails, at least for now. The good news, you don't need to read a 100-page report to start. Get your procurement right, get your governance right, test for your use cases, not just the benchmarks, and keep monitoring because the landscape is shifting under your feet. If I'm being honest, the thing that's changed how I think after going through this report is the automation bias research. I use AI every day for research, for scripting, for analysis, and I'm now asking myself, am I still sharp enough to catch it when it's wrong? That question should keep every business leader up at night, because the data says most of us are getting worse at it, and we don't even realize. That's it for this week. If you found this useful, share it with someone who needs to hear it. I'm Andy. This has been the AI Breakdown. See you next time.